and let us all do we can to build a better future. The DNC is afraid of RFK Jr. Now, we're going to be covering this election, and it's up to all of you to choose how you're going to vote. I've said on the show I'm going to vote independent and third party, and since Illinois is a citizen ballot initiative state, I'll be involved in the citizen ballot initiative follow through. I'll be looking through what's going to be on the ballot, okay? And I made a promise to myself to vote independent and third party, and I've been consistent with that from 2016 to 2020 to 2022, and the same thing's going to happen in 2024. Vote independent, vote third party. But I just find it interesting on how afraid the Democratic Party is acting towards RFK Jr. Now, why am I saying this? Why is the DNC afraid of RFK Jr.? Well, number one, his approval rating in the polls is rising up. It's at 21% right now. There's no denying that he is a significant challenger to Joe Biden's campaign. And so now there's a whole new slew of challengers, potential challengers. The Democrats want to see if they could maybe throw somebody else at the Democratic vote blue no matter who crowd, because Biden's not popular. So first, hold on, be sure to hold your vomit in, because apparently now there's another potential challenger to maybe siphon support away from Biden, but also maybe outshine potentially RFK Jr., or maybe try and dismiss RFK Jr. Gavin Newsom is entering into the race, potentially, maybe. We'll see. So let's pull up this video here, shot the Case Study QB. Let's be sure to check it out and find out what is going on.
Democrats are looking ahead to the 2024 election, but things aren't looking so hot for big bad Joe Biden.
The president says at the middle of that the economy is humming along, but that's not what I hear.
His team has been unable to actually assuage the fears and the doubts that Democrats have.
Polling shows Biden only has a 36% approval rating among Democrats.
And according to former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, Biden's going to have some competition, saying, quote, I think Newsom, talking about Gavin Newsom, running for president is a no-brainer.
Oh, Arnold, what happened to you, buddy? Did the brain worms get inside your head? Because Gavin Newsom ran that state to the ground. There's a mass exodus of people leaving California. That's something corporate media won't tell you. There are people fleeing that state in massive droves.
Joining us now, the Guy Benson Show, host on Fox News Radio. Guy Benson, hello, friend. Will it be?
Oh, hello, friends.
Will it be Newsom, who maybe is the nominee next year, and not old Joe?
I would be surprised if that were the case, but I can't completely rule it out. So Arnold might be just stirring the pot here, but it's no secret Gavin Newsom is desperate to be president. He's been courting the left-wing base for months, if not years.
If you're progressive and left-leaning, do you give an approval rating? Do you give a thumbs up to Gavin Newsom? In the live stream chat, give a thumbs up for Gavin Newsom if you know that you want him to represent you. Give a thumbs down and a middle finger if you don't want that jagoff to represent you. He ran that state to the ground. That's how pathetic Gavin Newsom is. California is struggling. There's no denying it. And the Democrats are 100% to blame for it.
Years. He's trying to build name ID. He's getting familiar with a bunch of national donors. He sees himself potentially as a backup plan to Joe Biden. And look, if you're in his shoes, let's say you're a very ambitious, sort of greasy shark from California, and you have your eye on the White House, and you're looking at the President of the United States, his numbers overall, his numbers among Democrats, the majority of Democrats who aren't excited about a second potential term or a re-election bid. And then you look at the polling, and you've got like RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson combining for 20 to 30%, those two, you might start to get a little bit, I guess, tempted. What were to happen if I jumped into these waters a little bit? I'm an actual governor of a major state that people have heard of. Maybe that number could be higher than expected. And then there could be some blood in the water. So I can imagine Team Newsom keeping a very close eye on this and keeping their options open.
I think it's a good point because, you know, I think the last point I saw RFK was at about 18, 19%. You add Marianne in there, and to your point, Guy, there
Oh, they had to throw in Marianne Williamson in there too. They forgot she's still in the race, but come on. Holding at that 9%, maybe clawing at that 10%. Her campaign's going under.
Up in the mid to high 20s, you start to get those two candidates, which are really not the greatest candidates to challenge Joe Biden. You get them up into the mid 30s. I think that is a signal for Gavin Newsom to go, this is my time. This is my chance.
And if that is the case for either Marianne Williamson or RFK Jr., if they do get in the 30% or above, then the Democrats can't deny it. That yes, absolutely, Joe Biden should not be the nominee.
And I'm going to get in because, again, he smells blood in the water. Do you think it's going to play out? Do you think you're going to have a tough primary for Joe Biden? Is this going to come to pass that Gavin Newsom gets in the race?
It's really hard to uproot an incumbent president who wants to run for re-election.
True.
Really, really tough. I'm not sure what that line might look like, that threshold in the mind of a Gavin Newsom. But again, that temptation.
Now, again, here's my warning to diehard RFK Jr. supporters and Marianne Williamson supporters. Before you start giving your time and energy and money to either of these campaigns, be ready for disappointment. Because let's say Biden does lose favorability with the establishment. Because, again, it is difficult to remove an incumbent president. It would be historical. However, the DNC has a whole slew of players that they want. But the problem is, especially with the Democratic Party right now, RFK Jr. is running his campaign a little bit differently than Bernie Sanders. Now, again, he's in the Democratic Party, but he has been able to attract voters who are independent and, yes, even Republican to support his campaign. But to be very clear here, the DNC does not run free and fair elections in the primaries. The Democrats have superdelegates. The Democrats rig primaries. We've seen it happen not once, but twice. So don't be shocked and don't be angry. The only thing I tell diehard Marianne Williamson supporters or RFK Jr. supporters is this. Don't spend too much of your money on these politicians. Because if they're not going to fight or call out election fraud, then you are wasting your time. I want to pull up this other video here from Case Study QB where, again, Fox News is talking about how other voters are not interested in any other contenders. Because, yes, there's Gavin Newsom, but also voters don't like Pete Buttigieg or Kamala Harris because apparently a lot of voters like RFK Jr.'s message. So let's pull this up. Again, shout out to Case Study QB. He's wrongly being censored.
It appears now that Buttigieg beats Biden in Democrat voters' pick of 2024, 23-18. What's stopping Pete from actually jumping into the game?
Well, maybe he realizes as well. I agree with Dana. The voters don't like him. It's interesting. The two people we were talking about here was Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris, and they both were set up by the press as being the ultimate candidate. We never heard she's the perfect candidate, but the voters didn't like her either. How about Robert Kennedy Jr., who's polling pretty well against the president? Why doesn't anybody mention him? And you know what? A lot of red state people that I know, they like RFK Jr.
Yeah.
And about the only thing he has in common with President Trump is that they were both banned from Twitter.
Interesting.
Well, that and also RFK Jr., dare I say it, is probably much more likable than Trump. Okay? Just a quick reminder here. Doesn't matter who you vote for, a Democrat or Republican. I mean, you don't have a seat at the table. Now, ideally, I hope to see in my lifetime maybe a president that cares about the American people, see a presidential campaign, actually put the American people's needs front and center and not lie to us. But I know better. I fell for that not once, but twice in 2016 and 2020. That's my mistake. I have to live with that. Thankfully, I voted independent and third party because there's no way I'm going to compromise my mind and my heart into supporting a two-party system that doesn't give a damn about you. Let's play the rest of this.
Interesting.
Now, again, the Democratic Party wants to make sure that a narrative is being shared about Joe Biden, that he is unbeatable. I played this video 2 weeks ago, but this is the tone in which the administration and even corporate media views challengers to Joe Biden's campaign. Just a quick reminder, because again, be ready for smear jobs.
The Democratic side, Bobby Kennedy Jr., doing well. He's at 19%. Hasn't really gotten that much out there. I mean, and I'm starting to hear more and more talk about him. Are we going to actually have a challenge here?
I'm trying not to laugh, Joe. There's not going to be.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yes.
Do you know how many people said the same thing about Donald Trump in 2015 on this show?
Except
said
I will
the
note,
same exact thing.
yes, because there was going to be a Republican primary. But I really think that the mealy mouth Democrats, as I like to call them, and some of my progressive friends.
That's what Simone Sanders thinks of you, and that's what the establishment thinks of you. Mealy mouth, weak, incapable of thinking for yourself. You got to vote Democrat or else. You got to vote Democrat because, we have your best interests at heart. Again, we've seen this smug behavior from the Democratic Party.
Who would like to live in a fantasy land, they need to come back to reality. Yeah. And the reality is this: the sitting president of the United States of America is a Democrat that would like to run for re-election, so much so that he has declared a re-election campaign. Right. In that case, the Democratic National Committee will not facilitate a primary process. There will be no debate stage for Bobby Kennedy, Marianne Williamson, or anyone else to stand on.
So we're going to have another Bobby Kennedy in an empty chair in the debate, right?
There will be no debate.
There will be no debate. No debate, because they know Joe Biden can't do it. They know Joe Biden doesn't have what it takes. They know that Joe Biden is weak. But there is something else to really bring up here as well, especially when it comes down to the Democrats. That is, no matter what's going to happen, this campaign, both RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson's campaign, is still going forward. And I found this interesting. As it stands right now, RFK Jr. appoints former progressive House Democrat as campaign manager. Now, it is Dennis Kucinich as the campaign manager for his 2024 primary challenge to President Joe Biden. Do I think that this is a wise idea? Possibly, maybe. But I am prepared for any kind of insider shenanigans to happen. But the campaign is still going forward. I also want to pull up this video here, where again, it's the namesake of Kennedy and how he's able to bring in conservative voters who do turn out. Now, again, the only way this primary is really going to be different is if we see Robert Kennedy and his supporters be very vocal and call out election integrity. Now, I do hope that his campaign manager, Mr. Dennis, is going to be ready. Because if you're not going to call out election fraud, you're wasting everybody's time, and it's going to be everyone, including the people who support Marianne Williamson's job, to shine a light on election fraud and hold the candidates accountable too. Bernie Sanders didn't do that in 2016 and 2020. I hope maybe we might see something different.
First of all, I want to get your top line thoughts about a Kennedy in the race at this point, RFK Jr., and David, I'll come to you. I've heard people in your party call him all sorts of names and blah, 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 blah. But the fact of the matter is, if you get 19% of support, they're not votes yet, but support, is it a cause for worry?
I don't think it is a cause for worry. I think Biden is well on his way to secure the Democratic nomination. The poll that was mentioned earlier, 58% of Democrats want someone else. Well, once you put a name and a face on that person, those numbers start to plummet. I mean, RFK Jr., I believe that his 20% polling number that he got that number before he even opened his mouth and said any bit of his platform. I think that has to do more with the fact that he's a Kennedy than anything else. But once people actually see his platform, I don't think any Democrats are actually going to vote for him. In fact, I think RFK Jr. would be better suited to run in the Republican primary than in the Democratic primary.
I'm not going to say that he's wrong because I've brought this up before. The Democrats have a thing called superdelegates. Republicans don't. Again, Donald Trump in 2016 was democratically elected, more democratically elected in his primary than Hillary Clinton was. The DNC relies on superdelegates. The DNC likes to put its full weight on the scale, so it favors who they want to win. It has been already revealed by numerous independent media networks that the Democratic Party chooses who they want to be the nominee behind closed doors. Maybe it would have been smarter if Kennedy actually ran in the Republican primary. He'd be more democratically elected. So I do hope his campaign is ready to call out election fraud. If they're not going to do it, and if you're a supporter to his campaign or a supporter to Marianne Williamson's campaign, and they're not going to acknowledge that election fraud is taking place, quit, leave right away. You're wasting your time and energy, and invest your time and effort and resources into something in which you could see a return back in.
When you see his talking points, he's talking a lot like Donald Trump and a lot less like Joe Biden.
On some issues, I don't think anybody would really get him confused, and he wouldn't let you get him confused. He knows who he is, and he has talked about being a Democrat. But just because you're a Democrat doesn't mean that you can't appreciate what the other side is saying. That's a note that this president ought to take and stamp it right on his forehead. All right, Giano, 58%, you just heard that from David, Democrats want, and it's what I call ABB, anybody but Biden.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? I can agree with one point that David raised. I don't think that this is for Joe Biden something that he should be too concerned with when we've seen that the Democratic Party, the DNC, is willing to rig an election in favor of their preferred candidate. We saw it in 2016 with Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders. We're seeing it now with
Fox News. The only place where you'll hear that statement. I didn't want to spoil this video for all of you. Now, we did actually show this video also on RBN, which was also with Due Dissidents. We did play this video, but I just thought it'd surprise all of you with that statement. Fox News, of all the media outlets here in the United States, because Fox News is just an establishment of CNN and MSNBC, but only on that network will you hear the truth that there was election fraud that took place in 2016 and in 2020. Just, I'm putting in that. You know, he doesn't mention 2020. But again, 2016, mentioning it. Where else? Where else will you hear that? In corporate media. Nowhere else. And just in case you missed it or tuning in right now, one more time.
David raised, I don't think that this is for Joe Biden something that he should be too concerned with when we've seen that the Democratic Party, the DNC, is willing to rig an election in favor of their preferred candidate. We saw it in 2016 with Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders. We're seeing it now when you especially have a candidate in a race, and I'm going to disagree with David on this one point, that he got this percentage before he even opened his mouth. Actually, he was in single digits when he initially announced barely hitting double digits, and now his take has grown because he's willing to tell the truth on a number of issues, which we've not seen necessarily from Joe Biden or many Democrats. I think a lot of folks are living in this la-la land, if you will, where facts don't matter and truth is something that's told only when it favors you. And that's what we continue to see. So if the mainstream media would actually cover Robert Kennedy Jr. fairly, his poll numbers will go up. If they allowed him to debate, his poll numbers will go up because Americans, especially Democrats, do not want to see Joe Biden run again.
Look, Joe Manchin.
You will never hear that on CNN or MSNBC. You won't hear that. And again, Fox News of all places. Now, I know independent media, we've had a very clear track record on calling out the fact that the two-party system doesn't care about you. But again, we're going to be covering this election cycle. And unfortunately, there are so many people still blinded by the propaganda that they're being bombarded with by BS, DNC, and CNN. You got to vote Democrat because we got to stop Trump. Biden's our best shot. Well, ask an average person on the street, though, especially those that have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. Ask them how life is like under Joe Biden, and they'll tell you the truth. People who don't spend their time, their precious time, sitting in front of a television set, lying to them, feeding them neoliberal garbage.
We don't know, David and Giano, if he's serious about getting in, but he really doesn't have much of a lily pad to stand on at home after voting for the Inflation Reduction Act, which yielded nothing in energy for his state. I told him that would happen right on this program. He said I was lying. I was right.
You sure did.
All
right. So that's a whole interesting takedown and analysis of what the Democrats plan on doing. It's going to be more of the same. So for those of us who went through the fires of 2016 and 2020, this time around, grab the popcorn and watch. But I do hope maybe things will be a little different. I hope that RFK Jr.'s campaign will be ready to actually put up a fight. Because if not, we have to finally come to terms with the fact that it doesn't matter who sits in the White House, be it Republican or Democrat. Nothing's going to fundamentally change. I want to see it. I really do want to see in my lifetime a president that cares for the people. But in all reality, it's up to us to fight for that better future. And it's always been up to us. Corporate media just told us that we can't do it. And I'm tired of them saying that we can't.